400K salary, Amazon badge, RSUs vesting quarterly. But here's the question. Are you wealthy or do you just have a high paying job? Because those aren't the same thing. I'm here with Peyman Ayoub, applied scientist at Amazon, who also flips houses, owns long-term rentals, and builds real wealth outside his W-2. Most tech workers I have met are making a lot of money, but have the same problem, thin balance sheets. They are earning 500K or more, but their entire net worth is tied to their employer's stock price and their next promotion. Peyman figured out something different. He is building assets that generate cash, whether he gets promoted or not, whether Amazon stock is up or down, whether he's working or on vacation. And that's not a higher salary, that's the leverage. And if you are a tech worker wondering why your bank account doesn't match your income, this conversation will change how you think about wealth. Peyman, welcome.
Thanks for having me.
Let's get into it. Peyman, you work at Amazon. You're an applied scientist. That's an incredible career. Why wasn't that enough? What made you decide you needed to build something outside your W-2?
I think there are different things that comes to my mind to answer your question, but initially the way it started as a hobby and as a side hustle just to see what's out there in terms of real estate. I've done stock trading in the past, kind of as a side hustle. I've studied a little bit about small businesses and how they work, but real estate seemed a pretty good avenue and relatively simple in terms of the knowledge to enter, I would say. Not simple in terms of operating at all. That's not what I'm saying. But I started a hobby just to get a feel of how it is and then decide. I did not plan initially to go full in real estate. I took a small step and then took another step and took another step. And that's where I am right now. But to answer your question directly, I thought it as a compliment to what I'm doing in terms of career and work, 9 to 5 job. And it felt like given the two main advantages that real estate brings, tax and leverage, it seemed to be a pretty good vehicle for me to be able to have a parallel track to build wealth and kind of speed up the wealth building mechanism, if you will. And I've always been, I mean, the last one is not, it's kind of a person. I've always been kind of interested in real estate, mostly because the physical asset, you see what you're doing and you see someone else is going to buy the house or going to live in your house. And that's kind of a joy when you invest in real estate, which I think is not necessarily available through stocks or other means of investing.
So most tech workers think I'm making 400K, maxing my 401k, saving 30%. I'm doing everything right. What's the flaw in that thinking?
I would say it depends on a person's objective, right? There are a lot of high income earners who are able to max out their 401k, they are able to invest in the stocks, and they might be able to live a happy life without any issue. They might retire fine, they might buy a house at some point, settle down, have family, so on and so forth. At least I can speak for myself in a sense that there are a few things. One is when you are a high income earner, obviously you're paying more tax, which is the money out of your pocket. That's one. The other thing is when you are an income earner, basically when you're working for someone else, your source of income is tied to your employer. Either you work at a company and you're being paid for the amount of work you're doing. A lot of people are fine with working long term, all the way to, I don't know, 70 years old, 65 years old, or they might earn a lot of money and accumulate a lot of cash or stocks, and they might retire at 55, 60 earlier than what they could have been if they were not a high income earner. In my mind, the flaw with this approach is a couple of things. One is that you're putting all your eggs in one basket in a sense that you're tying yourself to one thing. And there is nothing wrong with it. Don't get me wrong. I'm not opposing the idea of people who would like to do it that way. It's totally fine. I was thinking along the same lines if you asked me 10 years ago. That's one thing, that you're putting all your eggs in a single basket. The other thing is there are ways you're able to expedite the process of expanding your rents, right? Having a career is great. Having a 9 to 5 job is a dream for a lot of people. And that's obviously, I'm sure people are grateful for having a job at the same time being able to earn a lot of money. But if, for example, you think about retiring early, for example, before the age of 50 or 55 or 60, whenever, it might make sense to expand your horizon and include other assets that might be able to expedite that process. That's another thing, right? Tax is one thing. Having a parallel track is another thing, which are, I would say, those are the two main things that comes to my mind.
Walk me through your moment of realization. When did you look at your situation and think, I need to change my strategy?
Fair. I have actually a funny story about this, because when I came out of grad school, I don't have a lot of work experience. I've been in tech for the last 5 years. So it's not a lot compared to a lot of people who've been working for a longer time. But when I came out of grad school and started working and basically earning more compared to the student salary, I've been always fascinated by having an extra way of making money, be it through a business, be it through some sort of other investing, right? Because through my career, I was able to get stocks. I wasn't too worried about that. But what happened is 3 years ago, and I've been doing real estate for the last 3 years on and off. I'm not a full-time real estate investor. This is kind of a side hustle, parallel track to my 9 to 5 job. But the funniest story is I was in office one day chatting, with a friend. At the same time, I was on the phone putting bids in an auction in Midwest, and he actually won that auction. And that moment, I remember, like it was yesterday. I can remember that I was thinking maybe I should do that too. If someone like me can do it, maybe I should also at least take a shot and take a look at it and see how it is. That's when the investing kind of track started. I had in mind to buy a house at some point when I have enough money to put down for a house. But that moment, kind of something clicked in my mind that if someone like me can do it, I should at least take a look at it. I didn't have in mind that I'm certainly going to do it, but it was like I should take a look at it. I did. Basically, the day after that, I talked to him a lot. I still talk to him a lot to this day. And I started reading about it, asking around for sources of information, what to look at, what to read, websites. Obviously, Bigger Pockets was the first thing that a lot of people mentioned. But I've done a lot of reading and a lot of listening and a lot of talking to people. And I would say maybe a couple of weeks, 2, 3 weeks after that, I started going to real estate meetups in Seattle area. And there are a couple of pretty good ones around here, and people have been very friendly. So that's how it started. Then I started reading. As you read, you obviously learn something new, and you try to put 2 plus 2, and you decide whether this theoretically could work or not. And on paper, it could work. And then I started basically making it more serious, probably, I think, around 4, maybe 5 months after that, I bought my first duplex in Midwest. And that's the start of the journey.
Let's talk about something I see constantly in Seattle, San Francisco, and the Bay. Tech workers earning 400, 500K who look rich, but they're actually broke. You know what I'm talking about. What does that lifestyle look like, and why is it so dangerous?
I think being wealthy is kind of a personal thing. Some people might think they're wealthy with having 50K as an income. I'm sure those people exist somewhere at least. But something that happens pretty common with, as the amount of money you earn increases, the amount of expenses that you have also increase, right? Basically, you say I'm making more by, I don't know, 3x more, but somehow you manage to make your expenses more by 2x, 2.5x. You want to live in a better place, you want to buy a house, you want to buy more fun stuff, you want to upgrade your car, so on and so forth. And a lot of people, I mean, I think most of us are guilty of that at some point. A lot of people prioritize buying liabilities over assets. And that's when the net positive or the net doesn't change as much for them compared to when they were earning less. I think I was like that when I started working and we started spending more. But at some point, we came to the realization that we were living with X amount of money 2 years ago, but now we are living better, obviously, because we earn a lot more money. But at the same time, the amount of saving that we could have is not as much as the income increase, right? And that started another track of keeping track of our expenses monthly. And that's what we do right now. Me and my wife, we sit together every month. We go over and we have a folder for our receipts and every expense that we have. We go over them, we kind of categorize them, and there's a pie chart that you can see of our expenses every month. But I would say not feeling wealthy comes from the fact that in many people, they invest or they spend the money on something, on things that are not long-term, and they disappear, right? When you buy a more expensive car, after 5 years, it's an old car. It's half the price, if not less. And basically your money is gone this way.
You had to make a choice at some point. Enjoy the lifestyle now or build assets for later. How did you think about that trade-off?
So I believe that as people earn more money, they should be able to enjoy their life more compared to, I mean, at the moment, right? Like I personally don't think that you need to postpone everything until you are financially free and then start enjoying. I believe you should be able to enjoy your life at the moment, live in the moment, not excessive expenses, if you will. But for me, we decided to make it kind of a moderate, enjoyable life in a sense that we go out, for example, for eating, but we don't go out every other night or every other day for lunch, right? We have a pretty strict limit for going out and eating out. For this is as an example, and the same goes for vacations. The same goes for many other things. So I would say that's one of the problems that happens, that basically people lose track of these things and they start spending a lot of money on things that they might not necessarily need. We came to a realization that we still can enjoy our life to the best we can, but at the same time, we can think long term and plan for long term. So starting 2 years ago, it became part of our yearly goal to have a goal along the lines of real estate. This year, basically, we wanted to finish this, renovate the flip that we sold in September. The year before was to have that rental and so on and so forth. So over the last 2 years, we had a real estate goal as well. And so far it's been positive, the experience. I'm not of the belief that it necessarily means 5 years from now I have the same idea or not. I might think differently, but at least for now, I think it's a very valid and a positive vehicle for building wealth.
When you compare your balance sheet today to 5 years ago, what's fundamentally different? Not just the number, I'm talking about the composition, right?
I mean, it's more complicated for sure. Back then, it was very simple in the sense that there was. I mean, my wife also works, so we had two sources of income, two W-2s. You could do pretty much all the taxes stuff on online sources. Now it's a bit more complicated in a sense that there are different sources of income. There are income that requires kind of more of a care to be able to have the tax write-offs on them, to be able to kind of leverage the benefit of real estate. We are not real estate professionals, So we are not able to offset our income or the losses on real estate versus our income, which is something I think we'll talk about later on. That's why we're thinking of Airbnb and short term, basically purchasing something short term. But so now we have a tax person who helps us, for example, for tax every year, who helps us to kind of get the gains from the rental that we have and have all the tax write-off we have from that property to kind of reduce our taxable income over there. And as we look forward, we are thinking of if we do short-term rental, I don't think we're going to do it this year because of the time. Everything, it didn't kind of add it up. It didn't add up perfectly for this year. But for next year, we're going to invest in short-term rental as well to be able to offset our W-2, which is our main big chunk of income.
You flip houses, you own a long-term rental while working full-time at Amazon. Most people hear that and they think it's impossible. Can you break that down, what that actually looks like? How much time per week?
So now I'm looking for a property. So I'm not gonna talk about now, but I'm gonna talk about when I was actually doing the flip up until September of last year. It is not easy, obviously, in a sense that, especially when you have a demanding job. I do have a demanding job. It's on paper, it's 9 to 5, but there are a lot of cases that you have to work after hours, you have to work before 9, you have to work over the weekends. The way I made it work is that I do work a lot. Doing something that I enjoy is not necessarily tiring for me. So I was able to find time after work or during the weekends and try to make it work. And specific for the rental, it's very simple. It depends on the appetite of people. For rental property, the most time you need to spend is when you're purchasing, like you're doing the research, finding the deal, and purchasing the property. You can obviously find a property manager who can take care of 100% of that rental, obviously at a cost. They take a chunk of rent, usually 10%, 12% each, depends on the market. But you can be as passive as you like, except for that period that you're actually buying the property, looking for a property, talking to agents, checking the property, so on and so forth. So rental can be super, super passive, but at the same time, it can be less passive if you want to be involved. My property as a property manager. So for rental, I don't spend any time, zero. I get emails once, maybe a month, once every other month. There's a maintenance request from a tenant. I approve it. I reply approve, and that's it. They go and take care of it. Now, it's not necessarily the best money saving approach in a sense that if you were on top of the property yourself, obviously you have to spend more time, but you could maybe find cheaper labor to do the job. You might not, I don't know. For rental, I've not done it, so I'm not going to comment a lot on rental. For flip, when I started flipping, I had two main objectives. One was basically to learn as much as possible about the process and to get to know as many people as I can as part of this process who are doing something similar to flipping or renovation or big contractors, so on and so forth. As it started, I spent quite a lot of my nights, late nights, and weekends on this. What I would say, again, in case of flipping, although I would say it's hardly 100% passive process, but by having a good general contractor, you are able to, I would say, offload 80, 90, 85% of the load, right? If you find someone who's trustworthy, who has a good ownership, who thinks of the property because he or she is working on similar to their own property, then you're lucky, and it's not very easy to find, as a lot of real estate investors can tell you. But this can be also at least marginally passive to a great extent. It wasn't the case for me. I wanted to be actively involved, and I was involved. I would go to the property 3 times a week, once over the weekend and 2 times during the week after work, 7 a.m., 8 a.m., sorry, 7 p.m., 8 p.m. I would go there and my contractors that were there, and we would just walk the property and talk about things. One thing that I found out through this process, and again, keep in mind that I'm not a very experienced real estate investor. I basically, this first flip, I learned more than I made money. And they always say, right, that if you find the right people, it's going to be simpler. It is true, but at the same time, you should be able to find a good way to communicate with different people. For example, like very simple things. I got to know that, for example, my contractor, I should write down in a text to him what I want, but I should confirm it over the call so that he doesn't forget.
Let's talk numbers. When you run the ROI on flipping houses as opposed to just putting that money in index funds or holding Amazon stock, how does it compare?
I would say in my case, my return was pretty similar to putting the money in index fund. And the reason for it is flipping is very hard. It's not easy at all, especially when you are in a, it depends on the market, obviously, but when you are in a competitive market like Seattle, that one of the few things that work is flipping. Rental, for example, doesn't pencil out unless you want to do something creative. But at least for a new person, a new investor, flipping seems to be one of the few things that is still penciled out. And a lot of people do it. In Seattle area, we have, I can think of at least 4 or 5 flippers who are nationally known. They do a lot of flipping. So in a competitive market like that, finding a good deal becomes tricky because there is a huge network that's going on that basically you're competing against. Obviously, you can make connection, you can talk to people, you can. This is something that if I go back, I might join. I would basically find one of the people who actually do flipping and their experience and partner up with them, put up most of the cash and learn along the process. I didn't do it. I learned basically all by myself and the help of the agent, going to meetups, talking to people, asking questions, Facebook groups, so on and so forth. So in my case, the amount of money I put down to buy the property and basically everything, if I had put it in index fund, it would have been pretty close, maybe a little bit higher, but pretty close to index fund. And keep in mind that index fund has been performing very well over the last few years, right? So historically, if you compare to historical return of S&P 500, which is 8%, if I'm not mistaken, then I was ahead for sure. The duration of the flip took longer than I initially expected. Obvious. I mean, it happens, I think, to everybody. Everyone says add 2 months to whatever you think, but I didn't know initially that I should do that. It went way over. I think it went a couple of months over, adding 2 months also. So it went longer than I expected, which is a profit killer, right? Like every month you're paying for debt, that kills the profit. There were some expenses that I wasn't aware of at the beginning, although I've done a ton of research. I had a very detailed scope of work for my flip, which I got the bids on, but things changed along the way. We decided, for example, to add a bathroom in the basement to make it 3 bathroom instead of 2 bathroom. That added cost. And what happened is when I was ready to sell it, the market was on a downturn, which is ongoing right now a bit in terms of at least in Seattle market. That kind of shrunk the profit a bit more. So, but when I started, honestly, I said I'm 100% okay with not making any money. And honestly, I was even okay with losing a little bit of money because I said this is the first one. I might be able, I did indeed learn a lot. And that was my main objective because at the time I was thinking there are a lot of workshops and boot camps and classes that they charge you 15, 20K to basically teach you how you do it. And there are a lot of good ones that I'm aware of. But I said, worst case scenario, I lose 15K and I count it as going to a workshop. So because of that, I was okay with losing a little bit of money. I didn't lose money, fortunately, but the learning experience was amazing. I know the flipping process very well now. I wouldn't say that every property that I put my hands on is going to be profitable because that's not going to be true. But at least I have a very good grasp of things that a new person misses and things that should be included, and I have a ballpark number of things that cost, like the cost of plumbing, the cost of electrical, the cost of anything, basically, which is pretty helpful in the next one.
You work in machine learning, you understand leverage, small inputs, massive outputs. How do you think about leverage in real estate as opposed to leverage in your career?
I think the difference is, I mean, in work, leverage comes in a, for example, it comes in a way that you invest time at the start of something, you build something, maybe you spend 3 months, 6 months in building something, and almost instantly within the next month or so, you'll see the outcome of it, positive or negative, right? Like the outcome can be negative as well. You build something that doesn't work in reality. For real estate, I would say leverage, I think I mentioned it earlier, right? Tax and leverage are like the main two things that make real estate interesting, and the investing in real estate super, super rewarding. I think something that real estate, the leverage by itself, what provides is that it basically makes you more powerful, right? Like you put 5%, 10% in terms of, in case of investment properties, 20% down. I think some banks do 15% now, but like you put some money down and you basically are 5x more powerful or 10x more powerful in terms of purchasing power, which is pretty interesting thing that is not available in many other asset classes, which is, I would say, the most important part of real estate in terms of making it a good investment vehicle. But something that I've come to learn is that two things. It can be dangerous. I mean, similar to stocks, right? The reason no one uses leverage to buy stocks because the stocks can go down tomorrow and then you're basically screwed. I would say it partially happens in real estate as well, that a lot of people think that they are able to buy a property, let's say for $1 million with 100K down. They become a bit unhinged and make miscalculated risks, which could basically hurt them. But if you stick to your principle, if you underwrite the deal properly, leverage is like the best thing that is in real estate. And I've used it obviously for whatever real estate transactions that we've done in the past, and I will use it for the future ones. And something that a lot of people miss when, for example, I obviously I'm in tech, I see people compare stocks with real estate. And they always say, if you had bought a house for $1 million, the return would be X amount. But if you had put that $1 million in stocks, your return would be Y, which is usually more than X. But what they miss is that you didn't put $1 million to buy a house, you put 100K to buy a house, right? And that's how powerful leverage can be. And the difference with my work in terms of using the leverage is a longer term. You need to be more patient when you're using the leverage in real estate. You need to wait longer to be able to see the outcome of the leverage and basically the fruits of that investment you made, which I think sometimes can be frustrating, I must confess. But I think if you're patient enough, it's very rewarding at the time you don't expect it to be.
Let's say someone watching this just got their Q4 bonus or their RSUs vested. They have 200K in their account. What should they do with it that most tech workers won't?
I think what most tech workers do is that they buy stocks with it, or they leave it if the bonuses in terms of stock, they leave it as is, or they buy stocks, right? They don't diversify, if you will. What I would do if I had 200K right now, but specifically to answer your question, what I would do is I would buy a short-term rental right now, hopefully close it before end of the year and put it on Airbnb before end of the year and use that tax benefit in my next year's tax. If given the time, I would reach out to you probably also to help me with the purchase. But if the time doesn't allow, historically speaking, right now is probably the best time over the past 3-4 years to buy real estate. I think there is still, and I tell my friends that because I have a lot of friends who are looking to buy real estate, or they're looking to buy a primary. And I told them, like, this is the good time, just go. And they always say the prices are high. Like, you can offer less than the asking price. No one's stopping you from doing that. So if the short-term rental path doesn't pan out, as I said, I'm looking for a flip. So I keep looking for a flip until I have a good deal. What I would not do is that I wouldn't rush into it. Even for a short-term rental, I've seen it in the past 6 months multiple times that people buy it for the sake of tax benefits. I personally don't think it's the right approach. If the property by itself doesn't pan out, doesn't pencil out, is not profitable, at least to a minimum level.
You said something that kind of got me thinking, because we are in the process of putting 2 properties under contract this weekend. Now that the year-end 100% bonus depreciation rush is over, buyer competition has dropped significantly. And I'm strictly talking about short-term rentals, Airbnbs. So we are currently acquiring undervalued properties up to 150 or 200K below asking in a great location that needs some work. These are the deals that produce the strongest income once renovated. But timing is critical, like you said, because there is unavoidable lead time for renovations, permitting, furnishing, and platform launch, right? So starting sooner gives us more flexibility to negotiate better pricing, find the strongest deal, and position our clients to earn faster. Waiting does not protect you in real estate. It usually just narrows options and delay returns. So your goal is strong cash flow and maximizing tax benefits. The right next step is to get started now. So, you have the time needed to execute properly. And that's what you've been, kind of talking today, which I truly appreciate. You are building wealth outside Amazon while advancing your career there. How does that optionality change how you think about work? In other words, does it make you better at your job or worse?
I think one thing that I've noted, I was talking to someone the other day, that it has definitely made me more focused, because before having this kind of parallel track, I had my waking hours to work. Now that I have to allocate some portion of it to basically read or analyze deals or underwrite deals for real estate kind of journey, the side hustle, I have to be way more focused during the day, the 9 to 5 job. So that's something positive that came out of it, in a sense that I value my time way more, and I say no to more things in job and outside job as well. And that helped me personally. And it could turn out to be a source of income. It doesn't have to cover 100% of your expenses, but even like 20%, 10%, 15%, whatever, right? It helps to kind of reduce the stress. Because again, going back to what I initially mentioned in terms of not putting your eggs in the one basket, now you're kind of diversifying, you're putting your eggs in multiple baskets.
Someone is listening to this right now. They're earning 500K or more with lots of RSUs at Nvidia, Google, Meta. They're maxing out their 401K. They think they're doing everything right, but they realize after this conversation that they are playing it too safe. What's the step one for those folks?
I think the step one would be to go to and talk to the person that's closest to you, who's investing in real estate, or I would say any other asset class other than stocks. Just go talk to them and see, or at least get their thought process and why they're doing what they're doing. Usually when you talk to someone, regardless of how experienced they are, there's at least a couple of good things that come out of the conversation, right? You learn something. And then that's the starting point, right? Then they might introduce you to a book, they might introduce you to a podcast, they might introduce you to another person to reach out to. I mean, they always say that real estate is a networking kind of industry. Whenever someone reaches out to me, I connect them with my agent. I have a lot of friends who are agents now. Whenever someone's looking for a property at a specific location, I connect them because that's kind of their job to help people kind of start or walk. So that's one thing that I think is a good starting point. The other thing is there are obviously a lot of podcasts out there, and we are recording one right now. People can go and listen to podcasts, free source of information. There are a lot of blogs out there. And last thing is, a lot of people mention that don't listen to the gurus online because they glorify something that's not necessarily good, which is, I would say, 90% of the time true. But there are a lot of programs that can help you, right? That they're legit. They know what you're doing. They've done it for some time. They have good track record. If, for example, you have a friend who's done this in the past with a particular program and they're happy with it, or a particular company that they're happy with it, you can always go talk to them.
Okay, Peyman, this was incredibly valuable. Thank you for being so transparent. Here's what I want everyone to take away. Your salary is what you earn. Your wealth is what you keep and what compounds without you. Peyman makes great money at Amazon, but that's not why he's building wealth. He's building wealth because he took that income and turned that into assets that generate cash flow, independence of his job. That's the difference between looking rich and being wealthy. If you're a tech worker earning 400K or more, you are ready to build something outside your W-2, subscribe to the STR Loophole Show. Every week, we bring on high earners who are doing things, not talking about it, actually doing it. Real strategies, real numbers, real results. Peyman, thanks for being here. And to everyone watching, your next bonus or RSU vest is an opportunity. Don't waste it on looking rich. Use it to become rich. See you next week.